When you ask competitive Smash players what draws them to the series, a common answer is control. In any given game of Smash, you have complete control over how your character behaves and can influence not only your environment, but your opponent by how you act, giving you plenty of tools to help you win in a way that feels satisfying. For some people, that might take the form of executing crazy combos, and for others it's flying around the stage at breakneck speeds. But at the end of the day, it's all about the same thing, that intoxicating feeling of having complete control over how such a complex game is played. But sometimes, that feeling doesn't have to come from mastering one of the most complex fighting games of all time. Today I'd like to talk about my favorite game, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and the short section of the game that made me fall in love with it. If you're unfamiliar, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is the sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest. Both games fall into the Metroidvania genre of platformer games, where you explore a huge and diverse map full of areas and challenges that are only accessible once you've earned various abilities. In Ori and the Will of the Wisps, there are enemies and even boss fights, but the name of the game is movement. Some of the first power-ups you get allow you to dash, double jump, and launch yourself in any direction by throwing an object or enemy behind you the other way. These abilities come together to make the game feel fluid and responsive almost immediately, but Ori's moveset really comes together in an area known as the Wellspring. There, you learn how to grapple to specific types of flowers, giving you a burst of momentum that can be cancelled with any other type of movement, giving you incredible flexibility with how you move around the map. This area is charming and thoroughly enjoyable from top to bottom, but as you reach the final section of the Wellspring, you encounter a massive creature from which you have to escape, and it's this escape sequence where the game really comes alive. Where normally you only need to use one skill at a time to maneuver through various areas, and can take as long as you need to line up the perfect jump, now you're rushing to stay ahead of a deadly flood, and being asked to use all of the skills you've learned until this point just to keep up. You use jumps, dashes, and the unique properties of your environment to throw yourself through a deadly obstacle course with reckless abandon. Until suddenly it hits you. Those skills you were struggling to use precisely just a few minutes ago now feel like second nature. And instead of agonizing over launching yourself at the perfect angle, you're doing it automatically and already thinking about your next jump, because the game hasn't given you a choice. You're no longer waiting for a grapple to finish before you start moving again. You're planning ahead and getting ready to interrupt it at the perfect moment with a dash or a jump so that you can reposition yourself better for what's coming next. The escape sequence itself isn't that technically challenging, and it's far from the most difficult part of the game, but this minute-long encounter where the developers put your back against the wall for the first time and force you to apply everything that you've tentatively started to get the hang of all at once on pain of death is Ori and the Will of the Wisps at its best. As it all comes to a head, Ori explodes into the light, free to explore the rest of the game world both literally and figuratively. Because while yes, you can now access new areas that were hidden before, you also now have the tools and skills to explore the game as it was meant to be played. And how this game was meant to be played has nothing to do with finding objectives or completing the story, although those are well done and certainly worth doing in their own right. This game was meant to be played with joy and expression in every input that you make. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a game where I can, and have, spent hours simply moving around, jumping, dashing, and damn near flying through areas of the game that I've already explored, sometimes without a single hazard or objective in sight, just for the joy of feeling myself exert complete control over how Ori moves through the world. The sheer number of options you have in this game feel remarkably similar to Smash, in that everyone plays a little bit differently. You might have the same tools, but you put your own spin on how you use them, and it makes the game that much more fun because it serves as a form of self-expression. The way you move through Ori reflects the tools that you enjoy using the most, or think are the best in each situation. And for me, there's a comfort in knowing that for all the people who play this game, nobody out there plays it in the exact same way that I do. To draw a very unsubtle comparison, I'm fairly notorious in the Project M community for being a very unique Ivysaur player. There is no one out there that will ever combo the way I do, and nobody else even really tries, and that's part of what I love about the game. The fact that I can play the character in a totally different way than the other top Ivysaur players, and still find success while staying true to a vision of the game that fits my personality and my approach to fighting games is what makes Project M such a beautiful game. Because nobody pours hours upon hours into a game that they love because they want to perfectly copy someone else, no matter how good that someone else may be. Whether it's a single-player platformer or a competitive fighting game, we play to have fun, and that fun looks different to everyone. The ability to pursue those totally different ideals and express totally different playstyles using the exact same set of binary tools is what makes complex games so satisfying to play. It is why people like me put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into mastering them. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is one of the only single-player games that has ever captured my attention as rapidly as any of the platform fighters I've competed in over the years, because it has that same opportunity for self-expression. Ironically, the sequence I started this video with, the escape from the wellspring, actually doesn't have that much opportunity for creativity. It's a pretty straightforward obstacle course where the next step is always very obvious to the player, but it teaches you how to apply your different tools together under pressure for the first time, and understanding those tools is necessary before you can begin to use them in creative ways. I didn't fall in love with the game at this sequence because it was difficult or required complex solutions to escape the wellspring. I did because it made me realize what was possible in the game's engine, and once that spark of curiosity is lit, there's no going back.